So I traveled recently, and I would like to talk about how I planned ahead for my self-compassion and how I had acceptance and self-compassion for myself throughout my travels, as well as some challenges that came up for me. And this is going to be probably a longer video because travel is difficult, can be difficult for everybody, but traveling while physically disabled and trans and ADHD, it was just like layer on top of layer of challenges at some moments. And so in this video, I am going to first talk about the ways that I planned ahead for self-compassion for myself, planned ahead to accommodate my needs with respect, and then also going through my flight out and the challenges there, and then also my flight back home. So, if you've never seen me before, hi, my name is Ali or Oliver, and I've found that sharing my own journey of self-acceptance and self-compassion has been really beneficial for other people to witness and to learn from, and so hopefully some of my examples can help you or help someone that you know. So, right off the bat, visual description, I'm wearing a gray tank top with yellow and orange and pink and green butterflies on it, and there's some tattoos that you can see, blue lanyard, and a bluish green and white head buff, and then of course the usual dark. I feel like I'm a flight attendant with that motion. Anyways, I'm not a flight attendant. It was just funny to me. Purple wall behind me, and stocking and ear. This is so weird, like looking at myself in the back. Ear noise thingies and reading light, and then of course pillow and stuff. So, maybe it's just because like flight attendants are like on my mind because of what I'm talking about, but we're just gonna go with it. If you've never seen me before, I don't really edit my videos. They're very much off the cuff. They're very much real lived experience. And on that note, I'm gonna take a drink of water. Okay, so first, my planned intentions of meeting my own needs and respecting myself enough to take care of them. I had three, I don't know if you can see that, I had 3 sets of loops with me. This is my sleep pair. I also have currently I have another 2 pairs of loops in my wallet. And so I traveled with all 3 of those pairs. I also, knowing that the airplane was going to be quite noisy, I also brought my over-the-ear headphones. And so even just in knowing how much bustling there was going to be in the airports, I put my loops in first, and then I put my over-ear headphones on, and then I turned on one of the sort of like soft, no lyrics, instrumental kind of songs that I stim on, and I just turned it on like repeat for my entire time throughout the airport. Sort of as a preemptive, proactive preparation. That's a good alliteration right there. But as a preemptive preparedness of knowing that this song on repeat is one that helps me to calm myself down. The song that I went with was, I believe it's called Rainbow don't remember who it's by, but it's called Rainbow. So I did that. I also planned ahead for some other sensory things with my couche and my watermelon gum. And this was helpful in multiple ways because it was something to chew on, something to focus on. As an autistic person, chewing is one of my big stims, especially when I am stressed. And so that was helpful. And then also, of course, helpful on the plane, so my ears didn't pop. And then also the watermelon flavor. That is a safe sensory flavor for me as well. I don't ever get mint gum anymore. Not since learning that I'm autistic, but watermelon gum, I always get watermelon gum. And so that was a comfort as well, while also helping me have something to focus on and helping me to not pop my ears while flying. And then another thing that I did while planning, so I had this little blue food container with multiple compartments, and in the top of it, I don't know if you can see that, but in the top of it I had raisins and I had crackers, and then in the bottom of it I had chocolate chips, and these just unscrew. So and I brought this with those three things because those are three textures, those are three safe foods that the texture is always the same. It's always reliable. I know what to expect. These are raisins and crackers and chocolate chips are three safe foods that I know I can eat at any time because I know what to expect, basically. And chocolate chips is also one of my... You know what? Maybe I will do a new playlist on my channel for accommodations where I talk more in depth about different accommodations that I use in different aspects of my life. Because I was just going to talk about chocolate chips more, but this is about flying specifically. Let me know if you'd be interested in an accommodations playlist. I might still do it just because I want to talk about it and I think it's helpful for people, but I also had my Baymax plushie with me in my backpack because I know that soft textures help me regulate. And then I had, and this is, again, this is just, these other things are just some things that are on my person at all times, sort of always planning, but they did also definitely help in the hustle and bustle of the airport. And on my water bottle, I have this nonverbal communication keychain. In the white, in the middle, it says, I can't speak right now. And then around the corners, or around the edges, around the black edges, in different colors, it says no, IDK, yes, and then maybe. And then on the other side, it says, I am feeling. And it's got a bunch of different, face things. And I also have a version of those things on my wallet in patches with the no and yes and the different mood things. So both of those just sort of exist on my person all the time so that I can communicate even if I go nonverbal. And then of course I also brought entertainment, a coloring book and markers. And then another thing that I did to plan for this trip for self-compassion and for just knowing my own needs, knowing that when I get stressed or overstimulated, my appetite is the first thing to go. And so knowing that, and knowing that I was going to be in this overwhelming, noisy, busy environment, in multiple overwhelming, noisy, busy environments, because I went to the airport, and then I had a plane trip, and then I had a connection, so I had to be at a second airport, and then a second plane trip. knowing that I was going to be doing that both ways, for my way out, I made I made 3 safe food meals. Basically as much as I could carry in my backpack, considering that I was only taking 1 bag for a 4-day trip. And so right now my safe food is a tortilla sandwich, and so I made 3 of those, and over the course of the next, between 8 and 10 hours, give or take a little bit, that it would take me to get to my destination, I ate all 3 of those when I was able to, but also when I was feeling regulated enough, when I was feeling hungry. So the way that it turned out was, the first one I ended up eating relatively soon, and then the second one fell somewhere in the middle, and then the third one, really glad that I made 3 of my safe foods, because the third one really came in clutch. Because by that point, when I ate the third one, I was exhausted and I was tired, and I needed something that was familiar. I needed something that I knew I could eat without having to adjust to new textures, without having to adjust to foods that I've never tried before. And so that was really, really beneficial, really helpful for me, to have that awareness of myself ahead of time, and to be able to respect myself enough to take the steps to plan for that. And then let's talk about some challenges. I feel like I've already talked about some of the challenges, but let's talk about more of the challenges. So at the first airport that I was at, and I'm not going to give any location indicators, just for safety's sake. But the first airport that I was at, I got a male pat down. Have a beard. When I'm wearing baggier clothes, it's pretty easy for me to pass as male. And so I got a male pat down. I was wearing a hoodie, and I was wearing pants and whatever. And that was the first time that I'd ever had a male pat down. And it was pretty uncomfortable. I don't know if it was just this particular person. I don't know if it was just this particular person that, or if that's the way that they're trained to do pat downs. But this person, I didn't feel like a person with dignity. We're going to say that. And also, because of it being a male pat down, there was no consideration for the physical body that I have. And so that pat down felt very violating. Did not like it. And so, given how uncomfortable that male pat down was, it was such mixed feelings, because it was like, yay, I'm passing as male. But then I was like, I feel violated. Fuck. So given how challenging that first pat down was for me, I made a plan. I was like, all right, this is really uncomfortable. At least with the other pat down, I know that they will take my physical body into consideration a little bit more. And so I made this plan that the next time that I had to go through security, I was going to ask for a female pat down. And then I sort of had to have a lot of compassion for myself in the emotionally processing that, because it very much felt like I was betraying myself by deciding to ask for a female pat down, even though the reason that I was asking for the female pat down was because that male pat down was so uncomfortable. And so that brings me to a little detour point, where even when you are respecting yourself, even when you are aware of yourself enough and deciding to act in ways that is compassionate towards yourself, there's not always going to be a good choice. Like, there's not always going to be a clear-cut choice that feels comfortable or that feels okay in every way, because in that moment, after that incredibly uncomfortable male pat down, it was more self-compassionate. It felt more compassionate for me to prepare to ask for a female pat down the next time. And it was still challenging because while I was honoring that version of me that was so uncomfortable from that male pat down, I still had to acknowledge the fact that in trying to meet that specific need meant that I had to temporarily disregard, or do something in contrast to this other need that I had. And so that was challenging, and I definitely had to be gentle with myself while I was processing the emotions and preparing to do something that felt compassionate to that version of me that had had the male pat down, while also honoring that it felt wrong. It felt wrong and icky to be asking for a female pat down, especially after passing. And then I kind of already talked about how I addressed the noise. Unfortunately, when going through security in airports, or at least in airports in America, you have to take all of your technology off. So, like, I had my headphones on, and they were like, you have to take your headphones off. And so in taking my headphones off, I thankfully already had my loops in my ears, so it was still tamping down the noise and the overwhelm in that way. And the ways that I was able to regulate, the ways that I was able to have compassion for myself through that experience, while I didn't have any of my stuff, didn't have any of my fidgets, and didn't have my headphones, is I started counting. I started counting to give myself something to focus on. And I also started doing, like, hand stimmies, like these, like where I'm moving my fingers, touching different fingers to my thumbs. Doing stuff like that, or, like, rubbing my, like, knee or pants or my chair. Just finding something that I could focus on was incredibly helpful for me, because I didn't have any of my accommodations, and they did not care. And then after the first day of flying, when I got there, I was exhausted, and I had compassion for myself by asking if I could check into the motel early, and they did allow me to check into the motel. I did also have to reach out to one of my friends to ask to borrow money, because while I have reserved a hotel or motel for myself before, I have not done it enough times to be prepared for the deposit fee. And so I did get surprised by that, and I did need to ask for help for that as well. And so I had compassion for myself through that, and didn't shame myself about this expense that I wasn't prepared for. And then I also brought my favorite book, one of my favorite books, as a planned self-compassion for myself through this trip, to intentionally give myself something that was familiar, that I knew that I enjoyed. Side note, if you've never read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, it is I guess you could call it a paranormal or fantasy romance. It is very cute. Will definitely make you laugh. And probably also cry. But so that was compassion for myself, and then I very intentionally allowed myself to keep my plans pretty loosey-goosey. I really only had one thing that this entire trip was for. And so, other than that single thing, I kept my plans very loosey-goosey. I had compassion for my body that went through a full day of travel, and the entire next day I just let myself rest without shame, without guilt, without shooting on myself, without saying like I should be doing more. I just let myself rest and I just relaxed. And that felt very compassionate and nourishing for me as well, that I wasn't forcing myself to go. And then on the other side of my trip now, more challenges that I had, again with the noise, that was challenging, and did some of the same methods that I previously mentioned with like the koosh and the gum and the finger thing movements. The female pat down was incredibly challenging for me. And I don't know what I would do in a future. I feel like I'm going to be flying more. I feel like I'm going to have to figure this out. Or I'm going to figure this out. But for this time, the female pat down, I basically had to remind myself that while it was uncomfortable to ask for that, it did feel compassionate to honoring that past version of myself that was very uncomfortable with that male pat down. And then we'd already gotten most of the way through the pat down, and in my wheelchair I have like a stroller net that I put under there just so that I can have some more places to hold stuff. And because of my ADHD and out of sight, out of mind, I completely, like, the stuff that was in my netting under my chair completely just was not on my radar at all. And so it wasn't until I was like most of the way through this feminine body pat down that the person doing the like patting down and whatever realized that I had stuff under there. And the way that they looked at me the way that they looked at me when they found stuff in my netting under my chair was like the most suspicious, like I was trying to hide stuff. It was my water bottle, which admittedly did still have water in it because, again, out of sight, out of mind. And so they like had to go and dump that out. But then it was also a pair of slippers. It was a pair of slippers. But the look that this person gave me was so, like, suspicious. It was a little bit nasty. And I don't know if that person was just, like, overworked and exhausted. But it was a little bit like, you're trying to pull a fast one on me, huh? Like, that was... They didn't say anything, but that was the look. That was how I interpreted the look that they gave me. Like, you know how in... you know... You know how in The Good Place, when Jason... Very far in The Good Place, when Jason is talking about how Derek gave him the, like, mean eyebrows. That is a very niche reference there, but if you get it, it's a good show. You should watch The Good Place, if you want to. So, like, she gave me, they gave me the mean eyebrows. It felt like the like mean, very suspicious look, and I was already struggling because of the feeling like I was abandoning myself and betraying myself by asking for a female pat down. And so I started going nonverbal. I made it through the rest of the pat down just fine. I got all of my stuff, and I started going nonverbal. And after getting through that pat down, I had about an hour before I had to, an hour and a half maybe, before I had to get to my gate for pre-boarding. But I still, like, the airport that I was in was a very large airport. And I knew that I would have to go potentially a long way to get there. So I was on a little bit of a time crunch, but I also, I like got out of security and I went to the side and I went in a little store because I put my headphones back on and I was nonverbal and I couldn't breathe and I was just like having an internal meltdown, which is so uncomfortable. Like, they are physically painful for me. And so I went into this little store and I like went into this little corner of the store. Like, it had a section that was further into the store that was own little corner for kids. And in that corner, I found this strawberry plushie. And I was still pretty, like, checked out. Like, I was internal, I was nonverbal, I was panicking. I found this plushie, and I had Baymax, but Baymax was in my backpack at that point. He was not buried, but he was very deep into my backpack. There was no way that I was going to be able to move with Baymax and get to my gate. Like, I wouldn't have been able to dig him out. I wouldn't have been able to whatever. And so even though I had planned ahead by bringing Baymax and knowing that soft textures are really regulating for me, he was not an option for me at that moment because I was nonverbal and I was panicking and I couldn't just unload my carry-out, my backpack there in the store or while I was moving to the gate. And I found myself in the store holding this little strawberry plush and like just moving my hands on it. I probably stayed in that store just doing this for like 5 minutes. Side note, the reason why this is the one that won out, because there was like a whole bunch of plushies, but the reason why this strawberry plush is the one that won out is because it is like the perfect size for me to stim on it with both of my hands. And I needed that in that moment. And I needed that. And so I ended up buying this plushie for me and getting it in a not plastic, not wooden, that's the wrong, paper. Getting it in a like paper bag with handles. And so I put it on, there was an open bag that I could still like access after, and so I have they're over there, but I have a lanyard that I have like carabiners on to carry stuff. And so I put the bag on my lanyard. And so this little strawberry was just like hanging out down by my legs a little bit, by my knees. And because the bag was open, I could still like reach down and access this texture, this really soft texture of the strawberry, so that I could regulate while I was walking to my gate. Excuse me. And so that was a moment where I really needed the self-compassion, because the gender dysphoria and the ADHD slip up and the autism of the autism overwhelm, overstimulation of like not having my accommodations was just too much for me in that moment. And so buying this guy for myself was really self-compassionate in that moment, because it helped me meet the need. It helped me be able to still move and regulate my body and get to my gate on time. And I also bought food for myself and just brought it with me to the gate, even though I knew that I was not in a place to eat at that moment, because as I said, my appetite is like the first thing to drop. My battery's low. Cool. I have no idea how long I've been talking for. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you. I'm almost done, I swear. But thank you for being here. And I also ended up having a meltdown. I ended up crying. I ended up crying in the airport, and I didn't try to stop myself from crying. The most compassionate thing that I could do for myself in that moment was to let myself cry and to not pressure myself to eat the food that I bought. I bought the food knowing that I would need to eat it for my body's sake, but I did not make myself eat it right away. I waited until I was feeling okay enough to eat it, and knowing that I would be okay enough to eat it within the hour or whatever. And then I had a new experience. I've flown multiple times before, but mostly shorter flights. And I had to pee while I was on the airplane. And I crawled. I crawled on the airplane floor. And if you use a wheelchair, you're probably used to crawling. But the people around me were not used to me crawling. The flight attendants really did not like me crawling on the floor. But I had never needed to use the airplane bathroom before, and so I didn't know that I could ask for the aisle chair. And so, like, after I went to the bathroom and I washed my hands, they, like, brought me back to my seat in the aisle chair. Like, they refused to let me crawl back. And then once they got me back to my seat, they also gave me some hand wipes to, like, clean stuff off my hands to the floor and whatnot. And then I just, like, let myself sleep the rest of the flight and kept this little guy in my lap, even when my bag had to go, like, under the seat or up above. I made sure to grab this so that I could keep self-regulating, and I kept my headphones on even though I didn't have a cord. And so when we had to turn in the airplane mode stuff, I didn't access the Wi-Fi, and so I actually ended up getting really lucky. I found a pair of corded headphones that, like, so I, like, ended up still had my loops in my ears, and then I put the corded headphones in the, like, cup of the over-ear headphones, and then I put these over my ears to, like, help block out more of the noise. I've been talking for so long. That's okay. That's good practice for where I'm going. But that is it. That has been my self-compassion travel vlog for my recent travels. I hope that this was helpful to you. Let me know which part of this was most surprising or most helpful to you to hear about. If you like this sort of content, if you feel like me existing gives you permission to be more free in your own body and your own life experience, please feel free to follow along. I would love to have you a part of the community. And I hope that wherever you are nourishing and replenishing yourself. I hope that you are nourishing and replenishing yourself as a priority and giving back to your community if you have anything extra to give. And I hope that you are allowing your community to nourish and replenish you as well, because you are worthy. You are enough. And you are loved. I promise. Thank you so much for watching.